No pressure. Well, there's a lot of pressure, so I thought probably you have your after dip lunch moment. So I thought we could make a ballet together. You're looking at me like this is not part of the program. No, just kidding, but I hope I woke you up a little bit. The title of what I would like to talk about is If we fight for freedom and democracy, shouldn't people be armed with the most important thing of all, imagination? And it's also personally for me good to stand here because I'm active in politics for years. And before I used to have debates, intellectual sharing thoughts and getting critics so you become better. And I always try to have certain moments in my busy political career to have these kinds of moments. Because I really believe that a lot of politicians don't have enough time to talk, to share what they're thinking. And I also have to say that has to do with the fact that nowadays, everywhere you come, there's a camera, there's social media. And sometimes when I speak with students, also today, but I won't ask it today, I ask people, do you want a censored story or do you want to have the open story? And then mostly they say the open story. And then I say, okay, fine, but then you have to not use social media because it's really difficult to elaborate, to share your thoughts as a politician nowadays because quotes are being used. So instead of having a good interaction with people, it becomes a political drama. But still, I try to ignore all those situations and will do my best to have a sort of introduction. It's not finished, it's not science-proof, but I hope you will be inspired to have your own thoughts and share it with me because it can help me also, and therefore I hope the people I try to represent. As I said, thank you for inviting me here in Berlin. It's an honor to be here, and for me personally very special to speak about art, movie, in relation to democracy promotion. First, because I have spent many years working in the cultural sector, and I always have been infatuated with arts. Given the fact that I went on to study international relations later in life, 37, please finish your study earlier, I can advise. And I did it also during my being a member of parliament. And democracy promotion, I studied and made a thesis about democracy promotion in the US, the Netherlands, and Germany. So in a sense, some threads are coming in my life, coming together here today. I want to talk about the essence of the arts in societies that embody freedom of the mind and imagination in a liberal democracy. I will do so in 3 blocks. The first consists in a micro-scale example of the relationship between freedom of the mind and the power of imagination. The second will address the need for challenges in democracy promotion in times where existing democracies are under pressure. And the third is about the power of arts, the artist as a symbol of freedom, and the relationship with democracies under pressure. But first, I would like to talk to you about a girl who understood the power of imagination and what freedom means from a very young age. This girl was 13 years old when she was suddenly told that she was going to a shelter together with her siblings. The situation at home was no longer safe. So with only 2 bags in her hand and without saying goodbye to her family and friends, she left for a new city, to a shelter where she lived in a room with mother and siblings of just 8 square meters. The room was in a house where also lived about 8 other women and 20 children. So it was crowded. Altogether, they shared a living room and 1 kitchen. So her room was really small. In fact, only a bed. And she slept there with her mother, brother, and sister. Despite there being no personal space during the months she lived there, she felt free. She was safe. So her imagination and the realization that not space, but rather freedom of the mind was the essence of freedom, made her optimistic rather than anxious. Freedom was a spiritual state of being, and as long as she had the imagination of possibilities in the future, she had the most important thing to guide her through life. I will come back to this girl's story later. If we look at the macro level of our freedom and the state of democracies in the world, we should be very worried. I'm sorry if I'm repeating things that have been already mentioned, but if I have to delete it, my speech is perfect anymore. As the Freedom House already stated in his last report, and I quote, "Global freedom faces a dire threat. Around the world, the enemies of liberal democracy, a form of self-government in which human rights are recognized and every individual is entitled to equal treatment under law of accelerating their attacks. Authoritarian regimes have become more effective at co-opting of circumventing the norms and institutions meant to support basic liberties and are providing aid to others who wish to do the same. In countries with long-established democracies, internal forces have exploited the shortcomings in their system, also in the Netherlands, distorting national politics to promote hatred, violence, and unbridled power. The present threat to democracy is the product of 16 consecutive years of decline in global freedom. A total of 16 countries suffered declines over the past years, while only 25 improved. As of today, some 38% of the global population live in not free countries, the highest proportion since 1997. Only about 20% now lives in free countries. In short, things are bad for democracies around the world. All efforts to promote democracy are undermined and under pressure. Imagine if we had done nothing to promote democracies and to address human rights and fight for freedom. On the other hand, we should consider whether the strategy of spreading democracy is doing enough, or if we should increasingly realize that protecting our democracies and combating subservience strategies should be given more emphasis, as should the values that underlie our democracies. As we will soon not even get around to democracy promotion anymore if existing democracies lose their power. I'm not a scientist, and so I will not venture into a discussion about which strategy is best. But I'd like to share some thoughts that have a discussion afterwards. As a politician, however, I have long held the belief that democracies function by having essential foundations. These include science, the arts, a free press, and a functioning parliamentary democracy and judiciary. If authoritarian regimes often undermine these actors, first, then we must realize that these may also be the actors we need to protect most. If there is any erosion in these foundations, we need to be alert. Politicians play an obvious role in this, but we can't do it alone. We need to keep working together. Of course, politicians can use their executive power. And with this, I mean strong politicians that have the willingness to protect and nurture the foundations. This is a challenge because in times of unrest, it is often precisely the populistical politicians with no backbone, who magnify any unrest so that people start believing that those who can guarantee their rights and freedoms are actually the bad guys. This means strong politicians. This means strong politicians are constantly pressured, threatened, and undermined by authority-inclined ones, who spread fake news and challenge science, question independent journalism, and threaten free arts. So there's a cause for great concern. We have enormous challenges ahead of us. I will elaborate a bit on one of these foundations of a liberal democracy, the arts. As stated earlier, I wonder if there is room for artistic freedom in authoritarian regimes. It is my hypothesis that these two never go truly hand in hand. Freedom of the mind will always be there, but what if it's not allowed to express, or what if it's censored? What if the very power of thinking for yourself and the desire to vent your imagination is not wanted? Artists and filmmakers have the power to execute their imagination. We perhaps ignore it too easily. The mind's ability to imagine, the need to create and to express, making it visible and sharing it, inspiring others, making them think. Sometimes it is simply admiration for the person who creates, but often it also involves stimulating another person's mind, realizing that you can see things from a different perspective. This stimulates the ability to be empathetic, picturing yourself in the other person's shoes, what they have created, and why. That is why there are studies Courses, books that challenge one to study the background of what one sees and experiences. And sometimes the arts gives us the ability to see possibilities within our own professional or daily activities. It provides fun for children and stimulates their imagination, connecting their wildest fantasies. I'm sorry. Art can offer comfort as well as joy. People all over the world find comfort in music, films, or paintings. It heals, wounds, connects, and brings us nations together. Then, politics as a representative of parliamentary democracy and the arts. I will use this relationship to go a little deeper into what exactly is the responsibility of politics. To talk about the relationship between arts and politics, it is first, I think, relevant to distinguish the ways in which arts and politics relate to each other. In my view, we can distinguish 5 different relationships and correlations. First, there's art that reflects on social events and therefore are above politics. In this, politics are a dominant actor in social issues. Occasionally, lawsuits follow from this type of art. If politicians, for instance, don't like what the reflection is, and it happens also in the Netherlands. The court then play an important role in safeguarding the right to freedom of expression. Art can be a direct reflection on politics while also influencing them. Secondly, I would say that there can be similarity and thus an equal relationship between politics and arts, since they can both exist due to the fact that the foundation of their work is freedom of expression. Politics may operate on an equal footing with arts, with both disciplines reflecting on the same social event. Thirdly, there is a relationship between the disciplines in which politics is above arts, not literally, but in a dependent sense. An example of this is the political decision-making process for providing funding to the cultural sector. The art sector can apply based on political principles. Here, one may ask how free the sector is. But that is a different discussion, and it also depends in which country you live. For the fourth relationship, I would like to mention the perspective of art in a political context. This relationship is about what art objects are presented in political space and context, such as a House of Representatives. As chair of the Committee of the Arts within the Parliament, it is interesting that art could be seen as an extension of a democratic message, so to speak. Since art objects in the House of Representatives may, in a way, have no political connotation, can they still review whatever is considered universal or neutral art, and what it exactly is? And can it change with time? I thought the most difficult topics in my political career were, for instance, defense on Afghanistan or Habija or other major topics, Ukraine. But I also discovered being like a nice job on the side, chair of the art committee, was one of also the most difficult things I have done, because we needed to choose an art in the parliamentary sitting. So everybody could see it, the whole Netherlands could see it, all the politicians. So finding art where there would be no debate about, and every political party will be happy, and also 70 million people in the Netherlands, is really difficult. But I can advise to look it up. We succeeded, and the interesting was that in the end we discovered that nature is the basis for less conflict, because everybody recognizes in nature if you're right-winged or left progressive. The fifth relationship is about politics that as an actor engage in politics with the art, who may ban the arts as part of their political beliefs, or in the contrary, use them as a form of identity politics, of propaganda. I used to be, for years, as I just said, a defense spokesperson and an arts spokesperson. And a lot of people find that really difficult. And I see, for myself, a direct relationship between two seemingly different topics. In many conflict zones and dictatorial regimes, there are signs prior to emergencies of those regimes. Sciences, free press, free art, literature, critical opposition, and activist organizations are often disciplines made up of people seen as undesirable in a dictatorial regime. These disciplines are often hampered by politicians and sometimes even banned because of political motives, usually arguing that the state is being undermined. Politics have a huge influence on the five relationship vis-a-vis the arts that I mentioned earlier. But we should be aware of the different relationships to determine also when politicians use their power to undermine arts. So it becomes more visible what politicians are doing. Autocracies are not keen on artists reflecting on functioning of a society and a political system. Autocrats do not think it's desirable for artists to have freedom of expression and speech, or that every work of art should be seen. They think that art should always be created to honor and glorify the autocracy. And in violent authoritarian regimes, free thinkers are therefore the ones who pay a price and are either killed or imprisoned. Who will defend the freedom of all of us free thinkers? What I also find interesting is the spiritual presence and physical absence of art in conflict situations. Let me explain that. The thing is that in a political system of oppression, people can have everything taken away from them despite shared values and agreements. This includes your dignity, your physical freedom, your political rights, your right to present your self-expression, but never your freedom to think and to create. An example is, for instance, the White Paper protest, the A4 revolution in China and broader, or named the White Paper Revolution. The paper as a representation of everything protesters wish they could say, but were not allowed, bringing authorities in a difficult situation, arrest people for saying literally nothing and using their creativity. I think it's a beautiful example. Our ability to have imagination and the freedom to turn this into creation of art is in fact a powerful weapon against any form of oppression. Freedom of the mind ensures that our humanity can never be taken away from us by any authoritarian regime. With this, the art sometimes symbolizes more than we can imagine. It gives us courage and perspective through the imagination of things being different, the deep desire to be free, which we could call an essential value, the need to transform imagination into creation. This is what binds us universally. For me personally, the importance of art therefore goes deeper than the aesthetics. I have always found the idea that the arts are just tools problematic. It could lead us to forget its essence and power. After all, as just stated, the ability to imagine and execute is a primary need for human beings on so many levels. The fact that precisely in democracies, one of these foundations is often perceived as undermining by autocrats should tell us something. With that, I come to an immediate conclusion, that the promotion of art by politicians, the defending of the freedom of the arts to reflect on politics and society, and the presenting of arts in a political context are important acts. They are the concretization of defending liberal democracy. What if the arts are a stronger weapon than we can imagine? Without freedom of the mind and freedom to express, there is no liberal democracy. So everything we can do to protect and promote the arts is important, as arts are the concretization of defending this liberal democracy. After all, a democracy without arts is a society without imagination, which by comparison is an army without soldiers. So that's why I say, if we fight for freedom and democracy, shouldn't people be armed with the most important thing of all, imagination? I've reached the final conclusion of my speech. I have spoken about democracies under pressure in which people are oppressed and authoritarian regimes that take away freedoms and actively encourage hatred and restrictions of freedom of thought. I have reflected on the essence of art as carrier of imagination. We are living proof that our minds have a primary need to create from out our imagination. It's our imagination that can ensure we continue to believe and fight for our liberal democracies. And that girl who became aware of the power of freedom of thought at the tender age of 13, despite her difficult situation, she used her imagination to imagine what her life might one day look like. How is she now? She will always carry the realization of what imagination can do with her. After all, that wasn't the last time she chose to start all over again, with again nothing for her freedom. This time to fall in love with whatever she wanted, in freedom, without any cultural restrictions. From then, she began using her freedom to promote it, safeguard it, defend it, and create safety and freedom for others, so that others can also realize their dreams and have the opportunity to walk their path of imagination. She's doing well. Her name is Salima, and she's standing here before you 30 years later. Thank you very much.
She's doing well, and she's giving us a wonderful presentation, and also she has great timing. So now we are going to take questions. One of you has a second mic. Who has a second mic? Yes. Are you going to carry it around? So any questions? No questions? Do we have to wake you up again? No?
It can be also such a good speech that all the students believe, yes, that's the answer. We have this politician saying things. That's the thing with autocratic regimes.
Okay, then I'm going to ask you some questions, because I have lots of questions for successful women. For instance, do you think we can change the style of politics? When I'm thinking of like Jaden in New Zealand, she just resigned because it was too much to have a young child and at the same time to be a prime minister. So actually this kind of made me upset, because before that I thought I can't do it. I couldn't do it. Like, I'm like this little crybaby at home, so I couldn't do politics. So I was thinking, just the day before that she resigned, I was thinking of her and was admiring her that she can do it. And then the next day she resigned. So I was wondering, in your experience, like, since you started, like, did politics change? Can we as women together make a change to like be towards a more compassionate politics? So now I'm like asking the gendered question, not the right or left side. Just like, like, how can we do it, and how can we do it, and is the political atmosphere actually changing?
Well, the political atmosphere did change. I forgot who told me, but then I remembered it changed also really importantly after 9/11. We tend to forget because we have so many crises and wars and dilemmas that we tend to forget the bigger ones, the really moments. And I think also politics changed and gave a good opportunity for populistical politicians. You could also say they had a chance, but other politicians let it go. So because it's really easy to be critical about populistical politicians, but it doesn't bring you any further, because you feel great, you are wrong, and you're a fascist. You could say it, and you feel a really good human being. But in the end, what did you achieve? So I think it's more also on influence of social media, of course, but also the fact that a lot of politicians were not able to deal with the fact that people were questioning suddenly what we were doing. So in a sense, you could say there's more information for people, besides the fact if it's the right information always on internet, but still. And a lot of politicians having difficulties to deal with talking back to people if they're asking questions, if they are being critical if you're doing the right thing. So that's one part. And now it's really important to not only focus on these populists, because it's a sort of swamp. You go in it, and first it's really good, but then you're not busy with trying to explain to people where you want to go to. So you're only focusing. You're giving it more energy. It's like a monster. You're feeding it and you're feeding it. So I think it's important not to lose that focus, as it is for women in politics. And I'm originally from Morocco. My parents grew up there, so they were migrants in the Netherlands, and so I am a minority within a minority, etc. But the funny part is that I think already when I was 18, I realized that I don't have to do anything with the prejudice of other people. It's not my problem. It's the problem of the other. So I never lost my energy. or focused if somebody looked at me like, is this small, originally Moroccan person really the head of the NATO delegation of the Netherlands? I see them looking, and I'm like, that's your problem. It's not my problem. I try to use my energy to do the best thing what is necessary. So I also believe it's not only a problem for female. I really believe there are a lot of men who also do not feel comfortable in a situation where you can only be really aggressive. There's no room for emotions or other parts. So I really believe we can do it together. And my best advice would be fight racism and prejudice and sexism, of course, but at the same time, don't lose yourself in it. It's useless. You're giving yourself away to a person who doesn't take you serious. So you should look at people who do take you serious, and take it step by step. So go for it.
Go for it is a good key. Go for it for your question.
I don't have a question. I just want to add a comment. As you talked about art and the impression of art on people, we have something like this in Iran. That a singer was just arrested because of singing a song that was the wishes of people, and I really deeply, understand that, because I just can feel how it was, how it impressed people and how it gave us hope. So I think that you're completely right about the, it's a bit hard for me to talk about it because
Take your time.
people should know how art is what's the power of the art and how it can impress people, impress youngsters who are trying to do something. And for example, the song was about the wishes of people. People were tweeting about their wishes, for example, about the wish of dancing in the streets freely or kissing freely, and he made these tweets into a song, and the person won a Grammy recently, if you watch the Grammys. But the influence is really incredible, and I think we should take care of artists in any condition that we are, because they are the ones who can motivate people, who can make changes, and who can start something really big in the society.
That's totally true. Yes, thank you.
Do we have other questions, or do you want to directly comment on that?
Well,
I
this
mean,
is
it
a
stood
beautiful
by
example,
itself,
but
yeah.
I'm not trying to make...
Hello,
of
everyone.
course. Oh, sorry.
My name is Richard Omoshe. I'm from that great nation, Nigeria. In your words, you said democracy is a function of a better foundation. That's what you said. It's a function of a better foundation. If you want me to quote you, you said democracy is a function of... so let me bring in your words. Let me just get... It said democracy function by having essential foundations. That's what you said in your words. So I think essential foundations for me could be development. Yeah, am I right? So in a sense where most of the third world countries, I want to use Africa and Middle East, most of the Middle East country as an example, we don't have these functions. We don't have these essential foundations. And I can relate that to the problems we're having in Africa and the Middle East. So since we don't have these foundations, and we are actually struggling to have these foundations, and we have barricades. We're having barricades. I don't want to be too open. We're having barricades to achieving these functions that you talked about. So what do you think we do? Like it's happening already in Africa and in the Middle East that they actually rejected democracy already. They want to go into autocratic government. They want military to keep ruling. And so what's your take? What do you think? And secondly, I'm someone, I love art so much. I'm of the opinion that art can actually brand a nation. So what's your take on using art to brand a nation, to change people's conception of what they think? I'm from a country where 50% think we're bad, 50 thinks we're good. And I believe we're too good. So I want to brand my nation Like if you talk about Americans, you talk about British, they have their bad parts, but the bad parts will never come out. Yeah, you said something about the media doing so much about hiding stuff, and the media is not 100% when it comes to the truth. And to me, I think truth is relative. If you seek for truth, you get truth. But truth, you can't just pick truth on the ground or the floor anywhere. So now, my question is, I love art. I want to change people's people's perception of my country. I want art to brand. I want art. Through art, I think I can change what they think about Nigerians, what they think about Africans. So what do you think? How do you think I should do this? What do you think I should do?
Do you have a little moment? Well, first of all, I thought about this, saying this, because I'm really aware if you don't have defense, if you don't have education, if you don't have healthcare, or you don't have food, it's really easy to not think about art. So what I'm trying to do is explaining, in a sense, it's before. It's not only an instrument. So subsidizing artists, so then we get freedom and not autocracies. What I try to explain is, if we are promoting democracy, are we enough aware of the fact that one of so obvious, the arts, is there, that it's a representation of something more important. So the imagination and also the freedom of thinking. It's you won't feed your mouth. You won't get a better economy. So it's not in that sense a concrete policy. But I'm advocating that we should more and more realize that makes us a democracy. So when we go to other countries and say we can help you with your legal system and your bureaucracy and with feeding you, these are good things. But if people are not aware and if they want to do it themselves, I mean, that's the most important, that the mind and critical thinking is the most important. You understand what I'm saying? And if you ask me, how can arts help my country? And I understand what you're saying. It's poor. Well, then we have a policy debate, and I have some ideas about how you can structure that. But I need more time, and I need to know more before I giving general advices. Okay? You're easy. You should know. No, that's not a good thing. Okay. Okay.
This is also, you can like take some notice of that, like how she managed. I have to take some time. I have to get back to the questions and so on. That's like a key. If you don't know an answer, do it like her. Do
Yes.
we have any more questions so she can show us more ways to get out of a question? No, I mean, it's great if you have the honesty.
No, then I can also finish.
Yeah?
And I thank you for your time. And you could also talk to me one-on-one. And I really hope that you're using this education, because these are interesting times. And I'm not really old, okay, perhaps from you, I'm 44. But it's really important to be aware that you now here can do amazing things in 10 years or 20 years. Don't ever believe that you're too small or you don't have the possibilities. Really, it's really important that you're doing this education. Be critical about yourselves, about others. And the most important advice is never give up. And when I'm hopefully once will be on pension, I'm depending on your generation. And I'm sorry for fixing perhaps too many problems we left behind. I still have 20 years to hopefully solve a lot of things. But please don't underestimate what you're doing now and what you are going to do in the future. Otherwise, I will hunt you and call you and email you. Thank you very much.